The dormitory loomed over me. 5 stories of faded concrete and flickering fluorescent lights. It wasn't much, but it was cheap. Students and a few working professionals like me called it home. I had just moved in. The hallway to my room was quiet, too quiet. There was an odd stillness to the air. The only sound was the faint hum from the lights overhead. A small shrine sat tucked in the corner by the stairwell. It was draped in cobwebs and neglect. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. I told myself it was just the new place jitters. I was wrong. The first week was uneventful. The silence remained. I could never quite shake the feeling of being watched. My room became my sanctuary. It was small, but it was mine. A place where I could try to forget the strange vibes of the dormitory. The quiet wouldn't last forever. It was a Tuesday, I think. I was coming home from a late shift at the office. It was well past 9:30 in the evening. The hallway was deserted, or so I thought. As I rounded the corner, I heard it. A man's voice, clear as day. He's here now. Yes, on the 3rd floor. My blood turned to ice. Who was he talking about? I froze in my tracks. Slowly, I peered around the corner. Standing by the stairwell was a man. He was wearing what looked like clothes from the 80s or 90s. He had his back to me, but I could hear him talking on the phone. He was looking down. Who was this guy? What was he doing here? He hadn't noticed me. I didn't want him to. I crept back to my room. My heart pounded in my chest. I locked the door and tried to calm down. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I had imagined the whole thing. A sudden knock on the door made me jump out of my skin. The knocking continued. It was insistent. Reluctantly, I opened the door. It was just my neighbor. He wanted to borrow some sugar. I gave him what he needed and quickly retreated back inside. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The next few days were a blur. I avoided the hallway as much as possible. I ordered takeout instead of going out for food, anything to avoid another encounter with the mysterious man from the stairwell. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. One evening, as I was leaving my room, I saw him again. He was sitting on the floor outside his room. His head was down. He was wearing the same outdated clothes. This time I couldn't help myself. I stopped and stared. He slowly raised his head and looked at me. His eyes were cold and empty. I ran. I didn't know what to do. I was terrified. I thought about going to the police, but what would I say? That I was being haunted by a man in a members-only jacket? They'd think I was crazy. There had to be someone who could help. The old security guard had seen it all. He had been working in the dormitory for decades. He had a kind face and weary eyes. I decided to confide in him. I told him everything. About the man in the stairwell, the strange noises, the feeling of being watched. He listened patiently. When I was finished, he sighed. "It happened here a long time ago," he said. "A young man, a student. He was murdered in his room. They never caught the killer." The blood drained from my face. "Murdered?" I stammered. "But why?" The old man shook his head. "Some things are better left unknown," he said. "But be careful, young man. Some things don't rest easy." He was right. I had stumbled into something dark and dangerous. I didn't know how to escape it, and I feared the man in the stairwell was just the beginning.